Hello, and welcome to Scream Scene, the horror movie podcast where we watch every horror movie ever made in chronological order, and then we rank them from best to worst. My name's Ben.
And I'm Sarah.
Thank you for joining us today. Sarah, how you doing?
I am weirdly excited for this movie.
Okay.
I think because last time you described it as like proto Scooby-Doo, and I'm a big fan of Scooby-Doo.
That's true.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I could be doing better, and the way I could be doing better is if I got to see Sinners more times.
Yes. We have a friend who's already seen it 3 times, and we're here sitting going like, oh, we've only seen it once. Oh, but it needs to be again.
Yeah, we had like a plan to see it another time, and that plan fell through. And then the next time we saw our friend who we saw it with the first time, they had seen it 2 more times in the interim. And it was like, this is not fair.
Not fair.
We have a new supporter to thank on Patreon.
We do. Thank you to Travis Stone.
Thank you so much, Travis.
If you want to be like Travis and support our Patreon, you can head to patreon.com/screamscenepodcast. We have a range of things up there for folks of all levels, but at $1 you get thanked on the show. At $5 you get access to bonus audio and a lot of those extra things. And at $10 a month you get access to our writings, like our travelogue that just went up about our time at the Museum of Pop Culture.
And we're trying something new with those posts now as well. The travelogue about our time at the Museum of Pop Culture, and there's going to be sort of follow-up posts about other cool spooky horror adjacent things we did in Seattle and Portland. Those posts are going up for $10 members, but if you're not at the $10 level, if you're at just sort of any other level on the Patreon, you can get access to those posts by paying $5 for them, kind of a la carte, right?
Yeah, you don't even need to be on Patreon. That can be for anyone.
Nice.
But we will have stuff coming out for folks at all levels from our trip. Just need to get our ducks in a row for it.
Yeah, absolutely. As another note to our patrons, some laws got passed, and now if you use Patreon on Apple devices, iOS, whatever, in the past we've kind of warned you not to sign up for the Patreon through Apple devices because there's like a massive surcharge through Apple's checkout, I guess, in their apps. A law got passed, and now apps that you get on iOS are allowed to have their own like checkout monetary system that doesn't go through iOS, their own like purchase system, so that they don't have to have those huge surcharges. So like the default will still charge you through Apple's system, but you can go onto like your Patreon app or some other app and switch it and just use the like internal system, and you won't get that same problem. So look into that if you're on Apple.
Well, there's no good way to transition from apples or fruit or technology to this movie. So what are we watching today, Ben?
Well, I mean, you know, we were talking about Apple, which is, you know, a major corporation run by billionaires. And, you know, what is the most dangerous game if not a story about the dangers of
capitalism?
Right, yeah. Billionaires and letting them do whatever they want. So, yeah, this week, Sarah, we are watching BLOODLUST, which you have to say that way or in a similar way because there's an exclamation point in the title. So BLOODLUST from 1961, directed by Ralph Brooke. And there's no two ways to say it. This is a cheap B-movie adaptation of The Most Dangerous Game, which doesn't credit the original source.
Oh, well, it wouldn't have been in the public domain.
No, not at all. I do know
it
that
is
like
now.
Yes, it is now. And nowadays it's kind of treated as like a stock plot. Like
yes,
you could be watching any random children's cartoon and it's like, oh, we're doing Most Dangerous Game today.
Tomorrow, the least dangerous game.
Which, of course, is solitaire.
I don't know. Those cards can be pretty sharp.
What's your vote?
Paper cuts.
For least dangerous game?
I don't know, dude.
So, the most dangerous game is sometimes filed under horror stories. But we have not covered it really so far on the podcast. We've not covered the earlier movie versions of it because it isn't really, in our opinion. So we should probably talk about the original story and its adaptations a bit just to give some background here. So Sarah, why don't you tell me about The Most Dangerous Game?
What I do like about the title is it goes like, is it a game because of like, a board game? Or is it game because of like, I'm hunting game out there, you know?
It's definitely that second one.
Yes, but I like that a lot of people think about board games.
Sure.
So, The Most Dangerous Game is a short story. It's also known as The Hounds of Zeroff.
Okay, yeah.
And it was published in Collier's Magazine in 1924 by Richard Connell. Connell was a well-established short story writer and journalist. He'd been writing for many a time, many a year since this point. And for this particular story, he was inspired by this feeling of disgust at the big game hunting fad of the 1920s. So he wrote of an American hunter who gets lost at sea and swims to a Caribbean island. Now, in the short story, the man, his name is Sanger Rainsford. He is a well-experienced hunter, and as he's lost on this island, he makes his way through the wilderness and finds a chateau where there are two Russians living, General Zeroff and his deaf-mute servant, Ivan. Zeroff is familiar with Rainsford's reputation as a big game hunter, so he shares the island's purpose with him. Zeroff had grown bored of hunting animals. He'd been doing it since he was a boy, so he decided to use this island to lure ships to the dangerous rocks and then hunts the survivors for sport. The survivors, if they get through 3 days after being hunted, they get to be set free. But no one has been able to accomplish this.
Yeah, because if you think about that for more than 2 seconds, you'll realize that there's no way he's letting you go.
Well, it's either try to survive for 3 days or get killed now by Ivan. So there's a new hunt ready, and Zeroff is like, hey, Rainsford, it'd be real fun to bond over doing this together. And Rainsford refuses. So Zeroff prepares to hunt him instead. There's a game of cat and mouse. Ultimately, it appears that Rainsford jumps off a cliff in a suicide, and this bothers Zeroff because he got away. He didn't actually get to catch him and kill him. But really, Rainsford managed to get to the chateau and confronts Zeroff in the bedroom, and then they have a fight to the death with Rainsford winning. So it's been adapted many times, but the very first adaptation was the 1932 film that starred Fay Wray, Joel McCrea, and Leslie Banks. As Ben said, it's often called horror, but we outside of the podcast, we watched the 32 movie, and we felt that it's not horror because of what horror was in the 30s. It wasn't really trying to accomplish any of that. And B, the movie itself isn't trying to scare you in the way a horror movie is. It's trying to go thrill you with the chase and will they get away, and
yeah. It's an adventure movie, I would say.
But it is notable for a few reasons. As Ben said, it kind of becomes a bit of a stock plot because that theme of man's barbarism gets pulled upon for many films afterwards, even if they aren't directly adapting this. It's a very early Fay Wray film before King Kong, and that kind of skyrocketed her to fame. We do get to see Fay Wray in some horror movies like Dr. X, and the directors Irving Pichel and Ernest Sheedsack would later go on to do some pretty big things. For Sheedsack's part, he goes on to do King Kong, as well as many other movies, all kind of with a foreign jungle vibe. But we do see and cover a Sheetsack film on the podcast. We cover his 1940 film Dr. Cyclops in episode 75. It was determined to not be horror. And it was this 1932 adaptation that helped the author Connell make a transition from short story and novels to screenplays. And he would go on to earn a nomination for Best Original Story for 1941's Meet John Doe. Connell died in 1949, so he would not have seen this uncredited adaptation, so maybe that's why they thought they could get away with it. Also because it's a B movie.
Yeah.
There is a movie from 1945 that's called Game of Death that adapts Most Dangerous Game loosely, and then they also reuse some footage from the 32 movie, and that one is explicitly not horror. It's very much more thriller, and again, yeah, will they escape? Thriller, not so much film noir, which would have been in its heyday in the 40s, but thriller, like, will they escape?
Yeah, it, like, changes Zaroff from being...
to be a German. Yeah, that's the other big thing.
Yeah, because it's in that period. The other things about the 30s movie, the 1932 movie, you mentioned, like, a lot of these people had connections with King Kong. Joel McCrea is also in King Kong.
Yeah, they were filming this, like, The Most Dangerous Game at the same time. Or,
that's right.
Some of the sets get reused as well.
They shot Most Dangerous Game at night on the same sets that they shot King Kong on. So they got two movies
for the price of one.
Basically. And then, you know, because Most Dangerous Game doesn't have groundbreaking special effects in it, it came out first, right? But so that's like one of the most notable things. It's kind of this like partner movie to King Kong, and King Kong's another movie that like you'll sometimes see categorized in horror when it is also like, it's not a horror movie, guys.
No, it's a tragedy.
Yeah, it's a monster movie for sure, but like it's also, I would call it an adventure movie.
Yeah. Thriller adventure is also where I'd put The Most Dangerous Game.
Yeah.
We kind of covered this last episode, but in case you didn't listen to it, you know, totally fair. Part of the reason why we're covering it Bloodlust today is because it switches up the formula and has teens being hunted, which, as we all know, becomes a stock plot in and of itself. So it's important for us to cover it as we look at the evolution of the horror genre.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things that the 1932 movie version of Most Dangerous Game like changes from the short story is introducing like a female character to run around with Joel McCrea and get hunted, because in the short story it's just this one guy, and it's very thematic, right? Like he's a hunter and now he's seeing how barbaric hunting is because now he's being hunted. And of course, for any Hollywood adaptation, you got to throw in a girl in there. That's like almost universally the main change to like any source material when it gets turned into a movie, is like if there isn't a girl, there's now a girl, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's one of the reasons why Most Dangerous Game kind of becomes a stock plot, is this thing where you can kind of plop down anyone into the role of who's getting hunted. Like in the original story, there's that thematic resonance of it's a hunter being hunted, but like, you know, like make it Batman, make it like, you know, make it Mario, make it
Mario,
whoever you want it to be, right? Sonic the Hedgehog, it doesn't matter. Like pop some character down into there. And so that's kind of what we're seeing here. I also read some conflicting reviews of this movie, but one of them did point to like the movie having some like good like gore and grisly scenes and stuff like that that make it like worth watching. So I guess we'll find out how worth watching it is. As I mentioned a little earlier, it was directed by Ralph Brooke, and Ralph Brooke also wrote the film as well. He never directed another film after this. This was his only feature film as a director.
He's like, I perfected the craft. I don't need to do it again.
Right. But he had written a feature film before this. So his previous feature film he wrote was Giant from the Unknown in 1958.
Oh, where did we end up ranking that?
Low. I don't have it in my notes here, but not particularly high. That was the one with the conquistador
Yeah.
who comes back to life.
It's ranked at number 232, and if you want to go back to it, it's from 1958, and we covered it in episode 227.
He also was a producer on Man Beast, which is also not a good movie.
Ranked at 233, and we covered it in episode 187.
Wow. It's always funny because there were so many movies in 57 and 58 that the episode numbers jump dramatically.
They do, yeah.
He produced this picture as well. So he was writer, director, producer on this movie.
Triple threat.
But mostly in his career, he was actually a bit player or an uncredited extra. That's where he got most of his money. He had come from the Bronx originally, and he passed away of a heart attack at age 43 in 1963.
Okay, so that's why we don't really see more from him.
Yeah, basically. This film was produced by Robert H. Bagley, and it was shot in 1959, same as Devil's Hand. So shot, 2 years before it actually came out. Cinematographer here is Richard E. Cunha, who directed Giant from the Unknown. So
just a bunch of friends hanging out, making movies.
Exactly, the same group of people, right? Just kind of rotating who's in the director's chair. This film was shot for very little money on a 6-day schedule.
Whoa.
But it did manage to get some notable folks in the cast, sort of similar, again, to Devil's Hand. So this time around, the lead villainous role is called Dr. Albert Ballow. And he is played by Wilton Graff, who was a distinguished Broadway actor born in St. Louis, Missouri in 1903, who got his start as a journalist before first appearing on Broadway in 1930. He typically played authority figures like military men or doctors or the dad of the fiance or whatever. And Bloodlust was his only movie that he ever appeared in. He was otherwise just a Broadway actor, and he passed away in 1969. As Sarah mentioned, probably the most significant thing in Bloodlust is the use of teens as victims. It isn't the first time we've seen teens in horror movies, obviously. Movies like The Blob or the films of AIP had teen casts, but here they are explicitly being hunted down, which is what we're kind of identifying as a precursor to the slasher subgenre. That being said, the use of teens as the victims here kind of undercuts the story of The Most Dangerous Game.
With the sense of it being about a hunter being hunted?
Well, that, but also the whole rationale of Zaroff in the original story is the most dangerous game is man, because man is so much more intelligent than other animals. And Zaroff's a master big game hunter who's hunted everything else. He's hunted tigers and elephants and all these other things, and he's grown bored with it. And now he's hunting men because that's the bigger challenge. And are teens really the bigger challenge?
I mean, They solve a lot of dystopias in young adult novels, Ben.
That's true, but can't I just it's 1961? Can't I just put some Elvis Presley on a gramophone and I don't know, have some babes in bikinis, dancing, and it'll just lure them right in, and then it's just fish in a barrel, right?
Are you making plans I should be worried about?
No,
it sounds like you've planned something.
No, it's fine.
To a lot of detail here.
It's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
Anyways, our lead among the teens here is played by actress June Kenney, who was 26 when this was shot. She was born in Massachusetts and scouted by Hollywood at a very young age. She was kind of billed as being oh, this is going to be the next Shirley Temple. And she appeared on stage in local theater productions in California as a teenager. She first appeared on television in 1954, and Roger Corman gave her her first film role in 1957 in Teenage Doll, and she went on to appear in several Corman, teen pictures. As bigger studios began to pay attention to the teen trend, she found it harder and harder to get roles because she had kind of been typecast as a B actress. She appeared in a few, Burt I. Gordon monster movies. And she later said that she was grateful to Roger Corman for giving her her start, but that it was really difficult to kind of break out of that bracket of filmmaking because once people were like, oh, you're a Roger Corman actress, you're a Burt I. Gordon actress, they weren't often willing to give you bigger chances. She recounted her experience on Bloodlust as being a largely negative one.
Oh no.
She took the role as a favor for the director, and it made her question the direction her career had taken.
Oh.
Her last film was The Cat Burglar in 1961, and she was very dissatisfied with the roles she was being offered at that time, so she decided to retire. She got married in 1970 and passed away in 2021 at age 87. Her love interest in the picture is played by actor Robert Reed, who was 27 at the time of shooting. Born John Robert Reitz Jr. in Illinois, he took to the stage in high school and got involved with radio, studying drama at university. After graduation, he adopted the stage name Robert Reed and appeared in Shakespearean theater before moving to LA to help his career. His first credited film appearance was in Bloodlust. But later in 1961, he landed a lead role in the television show The Defenders, which was a legal drama. That show ran for 4 seasons and frequently covered controversial subject matter. And then, in 1969, he was cast as patriarch Mike Brady in the family sitcom The Brady Bunch.
Amazing.
Which ran for 5 seasons. The show was hugely successful, but Reed was always unhappy doing it as he felt the material was beneath him. He frequently butted heads with the show's producers and directors, demanding rewrites to scripts. He felt that, the only reason the Brady Bunch was even slightly grounded as a show was because of his insistence to, treat the characters as people. He butted heads with the producers and directors and writers on that show so much that he doesn't appear in the final episode.
Ooh.
But he was always nice to his co-stars, the kids and everyone else on the show always remembered him as being really great to them. He was gay, a fact that he kept secret his entire life.
Well, when your major role is as a dad,
yeah,
in this very heterosexual family,
yeah. Basically, everybody on the show knew, and they were all if anyone had known, his career would have been over, basically. So he was very unhappy about that for his entire life. He was HIV positive, and he passed away from cancer in 1991 at age 59.
Okay.
Elsewhere in the cast, we have Gene Persson, another 25-year-old playing a teen. And he's not really famous as an actor, but he would go on to have another career after he stopped acting as a theater producer. And he produced the original run of the 1967 musical You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown.
Dang.
French actress Liliane Chauvin, who had moved to New York at age 27 in 1952, plays the villain's wife.
That's a combo breaker here.
Yeah. She gets second billing after Graff himself playing the villain. I think because they're both the oldest people in the cast and had the most experience.
Sure.
But it's really a small role. She had a long acting career in film and would continue to have one after this, but today she's probably best remembered for teaching at the film schools of UCLA and USC for over a decade, passing away at age 82 in 2008.
One of those actors, their last name was Persson?
Yes, Gene Persson.
Gene Persson. I feel like, if Gene turned out to be non-binary, he should change his name to Gene People.
Bad joke.
Good joke, I think.
No. Bad joke. So like The Devil's Hand, Bloodlust sat on a shelf for 2 years before Crown International Pictures scooped it up to release on the double bill in 1961.
Do you think it was like a package?
So they were both produced by completely different companies. So I just feel like they scooped up one of these and then needed something else to go along with it, right? Critical reception to Bloodlust was poor. It was called a wretched misuse of the source material.
Oh.
It was featured in season 6, episode 7 of Mystery Science Theater 3000. And like The Devil's Hand, it has lapsed into the public domain.
Well, we will see if Bloodlust holds up to this reputation. Where can people watch along with us, Ben?
Well, one of the nice things about public domain movies is that you can usually catch them on our YouTube playlist,
which you can find at screamscenepodcast.com. You're going to hear a brief musical interlude, and when we come back, we will discuss Bloodlust from 1961, directed by Ralph Brooke.
See you on the other side, everybody.
Welcome back to Scream Scene. We just finished watching Bloodlust from 1961, directed by Ralph Brooke. Ben, what did you think? Was this deserving of an exclamation point?
No. This is deserving of like
a yawn.
Yeah. Honestly, this was really boring. It's pretty bad. It's not like even fun bad for most of it. There's like a few like parts that you can laugh at because of how ridiculous they are, but for the most part, this is just kind of boring.
Yeah. As Ben kind of alluded to with like the reviews he shared, there is some good gore, but I don't think this movie has really anything else going for it.
I would agree.
But let me tell you about it. So our 4 teens here, we have 2 couples, Betty and Johnny, and Jenny and Pete. Pete's the nerd, Jenny's younger, Johnny's the jock, and Betty is the blonde, but also her dad is like a judo champion and taught her judo.
Johnny and Betty are kind of functional people, and Pete and Jeannie are useless and exist to sort of get into trouble and need to be saved.
Yeah. But hey, they're here, they're together, we're on vacation. They've rented a boat from a local to take them around wherever they are. And the captain of the boat, his name is Tony, and he passes out drunk. So they're like, well, what are we going to do? Oh, there's a mysterious island over there. Well, let's go explore it. So they head ashore to the mysterious island and they meet Dr. Ballow.
Or Below.
Sometimes I was also hearing like Bella.
And Baloo. No one could agree how to say this name.
Yeah. This guy, Dr. Ballow, he is a witch hunter. He moved here after the war. He was previously a museum curator. And then he was like forced to fight in the war as like a sniper. Never says what side.
That's true. I also like, he says that they made him be a sniper because of his like good eyesight and like steady hand. I don't actually know if that's how that works.
I don't think so.
Like, I don't think that they can just be like, you there, you're a sniper now.
Yeah. I mean, they did that in Vietnam, didn't they? So,
I mean, I guess, I don't know. I'm just maybe betraying my ignorance on how military work, but like you could be a conscientious objector.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay, so yeah, that's Dr. Below.
He got bloodlust from being in the war.
Yes. We also meet his wife, Sandra, and their friend, Dean, and a bunch of goons that are here who are basically in uniforms like it's Batman 66. They wear berets. I don't think they're meant to be berets, but they look like berets. Bandanas around their necks, and then striped shirts and pants, of course. I think the vibe is supposed to be like sailor, but it also feels like Frenchman.
Yeah, except that they're all like kind of weird, like 5 o'clock shadow, like greased up, kind of like scumbag looking people.
Yeah, that's how we know that they're goons.
Yeah, hired goons.
Hired goons. Some of which can't talk. Like some don't get lines and they just grunt. I don't know if that's just a factor of we didn't want to have to pay them, or in the case of one of the goons whose name is John Doerr, I think he takes the place of the deaf mute servant from the original short story.
I think so.
So Sandra and Dean, so the wife and the best friend, they love each other and they want to GTFO. They've been stuck here for a year. It's unclear how and why anyone is on this island.
Yeah.
And they decide to use the teens' arrival for their escape. Their plan is it's basically throwing the teens under the bus. It's very funny. But anyways, they try to escape, but they do get hunted down by Dr. Below. We are now 2 days in to the teens being in the chateau and not being able to leave. We've gone exploring a couple times. The first time, Jeannie and Pete go into this underground tunnel, and then they find a shed where there's taxidermy going on.
Taxidermy of people.
Yes. So some good creepiness going on of like finding a dead body floating in this like aquarium. This one guy comes in and he's pulling out like a foot and then what appears to be like skin from this vat. And then like it's like a face mask and he starts stuffing it with cotton.
It's like, when you go to like a Halloween store and you buy like a plastic mask of like Keanu Reeves and it's got like a full face and like a head of hair and everything. He like pulls this out of the vat as if like that's like as if the way you do taxidermy is like boil the skin off someone's skeleton and then stuff it, but like it comes off with just like the hair and everything.
That might be how.
I don't know how taxidermy works.
I don't think it is though.
It's gruesome and creepy if it wasn't for the fact that you can very clearly look at the things he's pulling out and be like, that's from a Halloween store.
I will say, when he's pulling out the thing that's supposed to be skin, I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
So I think there are some effective things here. Jeannie's very upset about all this, for sure. The other time that we go exploring, Betty and Johnny find a secret door that leads them into the trophy room, which is not like, here's my room of trophies all on a mantle. It's like a cave with special lighting. And what Dr. Below does is the victims, he has them posed in a way that kind of reminds him of the way that they were before he killed them. We see some cases and that, these were convicts who had escaped from the local penal colony who he killed. And then we see Sandra and Dean in like a loving embrace, taxidermied like that, which it's like he would have had to have done that taxidermy in 2 days, and it's very complicated. So, shout out to his taxidermist, like very talented person. And there's also a spot here for 4 teens. So Below plans to hunt Pete and Johnny next, plus boat captain Tony, because Tony apparently was in on the whole scheme. He would pick up the convicts from the local penal colony and bring them over to the murder island, which I think is the implication for why he's drinking when he's out with the teens. It's not that he was purposefully bringing the teens here, but because he messed up with that, with these teens now being here, Tony now gets to be hunted as well. Now, Dr. Below does give them a pistol, but the ammo is in the middle of the island in the Tree of Death. They get a head start, so The three guys head there. They only find one bullet, and Tony takes it and runs. He literally says, "See you later, suckers." He ends up facing Ballo alone and loses because Ballo took the firing pin out of the pistol. So Tony gets a crossbow bolt to the chest. Now, as Ballo is going through the jungle, he doesn't have like hunting dogs or anything. He uses John Doerr. Now, John Doerr, he's a deaf mute. He basically is like hunched down on the ground as if he's like sniffing out the prey, but he also keeps messing up by giving away their position. So at one point, Johnny and Pete stumble into some quicksand. Johnny gets Pete out fairly quickly.
Yeah, it's not a big problem.
But as Ballo and John Doerr follow, John Doerr falls into the quicksand, and Ballo's like, "Yeah, but you've been messing up, so I'm not going to save you. Bye." Drown in the leech water. Back at the house, Betty and Jeannie find a way to escape, circumventing the goons. And as they are trying to escape, they go back down into the tunnel where the taxidermy shed is. They get caught by a goon, and he's like, "Oh, good. Now I have you all to myself," and is basically threatening sexual violence. Great. And Betty judo flips him into the vat of acid, and we get to see his face melt.
Yep. Why they just keep that vat of acid sort of sitting there open air, who knows? OSHA has not been to this place.
But the girls get out to the jungle, meet up with the boys, and they decide, no, we need to get back to the house to try to find some guns, and then we'll find our way to the hidden cove where the boats are. They get back into the house, grab some guns, just as Ballo follows them in, so they decide to hide in the trophy room to ambush him. Ballo tracks them into there, and he's about to kill them when John Doerr comes out and attacks Ballo in the fashion of creature destroying Dr. Frankenstein style.
Yeah.
He basically attacks Ballo and then also pushes him onto some spikes. So he kind of looks like he gets a little crucified, but not actually crucified in the technical term.
Yeah, I think he's mounting Ballo on where he would have a trophy mounted, and it jams these mounting spikes through Ballo's wrists, and he bleeds to death and dies.
Yeah. I mean, it also goes into his back and stuff. So
sure.
We do get some good shots of blood pulsing out of his hands and mouth.
Yeah.
And that's the end.
Yep.
So the writing here isn't good.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything so egregious that I think it would be akin to I don't know, Neanderthal Man, or even Scared to Death, where with one of those you're kind of frustrated, and then the other one you're laughing. You're just bored in Bloodlust.
Everything here is just first idea. Everything here is very paint by numbers. It's very formulaic,
meandering.
It feels incredibly cheap. Mm-hmm. The whole movie is just kind of medium shots, proscenium style. Nothing much really interesting happens. There's no twists or surprises on the formula here. All the teens live.
Yeah, why are they so afraid to kill any of their main characters?
Yeah, so we have all these the only people who die are Sandra and Dean, who aren't needed for the story, right? If you're watching along and you know Most Dangerous Game, it's oh, why does the villain suddenly have a wife and the wife has a lover? These are new characters, and it's well, so they can die in the next scene, right?
Basically.
And then the only people who die otherwise are minions or rando, insane convicts who are wandering through the jungle, random encounters. And the teens all live. The hokey ending where the abused underling returns to kill the bad guy is extremely underdeveloped, because I didn't even remember that this guy's name was John Doerr.
I only knew that because I looked up the cast list.
Right. And he's just kind of this goon who's with him, and then he falls into the quicksand leech water, and that's the end of him for like an hour, well, not an hour, but probably half an hour. And then he just kind of comes out of nowhere into the trophy room at the end. It's like, and then he kills the doctor. And that's such an old fashioned ending. Like you brought up Dr. Frankenstein, but yeah, like this kind of, it's all very old hat.
Especially with the fact that nothing that our main characters do matters.
Absolutely. Like the main characters get brought by Ballo to his chateau. They watch a bunch of people get killed. They run into the jungle. Then they
run out of the jungle.
Right. Then they grab some guns. They don't grab ammo. And so then John Doerr comes and kills the bad guy.
Yeah.
Like they're just witnesses basically to a bunch of stuff.
And there have been movies that we've seen where that has been an added element to the horror. That's not the case here. I think it contributes to it feeling boring because the people who, like, we don't care about these teens because the movie doesn't care about the teens really. But I think it assumes that you don't want to see them die. So they are hesitant to put them in any kind of danger. I think the closest kind of danger we get is when that goon attacks Betty.
Mm-hmm. Or like Pete slips into some quicksand for 30 seconds.
Yeah, but that isn't even exciting.
No, like, yeah, probably the most like thrilling scene is when like Betty judo throws the guy into the acid. You talk about how this movie feels boring and how the teens don't feel threatened. I think a big part of this is like, there are scenes that are just like, you know, it's like Dr. Ballo sitting at a desk and the teens are all gathered around him for like a friendly conversation, basically, where Ballo's like, yeah, so here's the deal. I'm going to release the boys into the jungle and I'm going to hunt them down and murder them. The girls are going to stay behind and be replacements for the wife I just murdered. This is what's going to happen. And the teens are like, oh, say it ain't so, Dr. Ballo. Like, how could you do such a mean old thing?
Exactly. That is 100% the tone. And let me also paint the picture for you, listener. So Betty, who knows judo, is behind Ballo.
Yeah.
There's also a lamp right there. There's no effort to attack him. There's no effort to enact any kind of agency.
Yeah, the teens don't act like they're in serious danger, so why should the audience care, right? And the fact that, yeah, they're just having these like very sensible conversations, like, well, you know, Dr. Ballo, like, I don't really think that's like a good idea of yours to hunt us for sport to the death. And Pete's like, yeah, you're just joking, aren't you? And like, Ballo's
despite Pete being the one who found the taxidermy shed.
Right.
Being like, no, I think he's just joking. Like, what did you think you saw? My guy.
And Ballo's just like, no, I'm not joking. I'm going to hunt you down and it's going to be really fun. Come on, guys. Like, it's so bizarre and it becomes like so difficult to take anything seriously.
I mean, I think that Ballo's matter-of-factness is part of his character.
Sure.
That's part of the way that the character in the original short story is. But the fact that everyone is acting that way. I will say Tony does a good job.
Right. Yeah, Tony seems like a person. The teens, like the worst thing that happens to any of the 4 teens is that Pete gets some mud on his pants.
Oh, no, he gets all these leeches on his chest and he freaks out.
Yeah, that's true.
And then we have to cut away while...
Pete is so useless. Like, Pete is just like, oh, Johnny, do everything for me. Jeannie's mildly less useless because she'll actually, like, do things Betty tells her to do. Johnny is reasonably useless. Like, he's confident, but he's not competent. So really, it's just like Betty is the only person who knows how to do anything. She manages to get Jeannie out of the house by like a whole plan about smashing a window. And then she judo flips the guy into the acid. Like she saves, there's this, the whole way they first meet Ballo is that they're walking along the beach like, oh, let's find some bananas for dinner, gang. And Johnny like falls into a pit trap and Betty's the one who like goes down and rescues him.
You had the greatest line as we were watching this. You said, these teens have 4 brain cells between them, and Betty has all of them.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, they're just really boring. Nothing happens in this movie. I would say that the only things the movie has going for it are, like you said, some moments of gore, right? The guy whose face gets melted off by acid, the kind of creepiness of like pulling the like skin suits out of the vat.
Yeah, because like he pulls out a foot and like dismembered body parts. A, we've seen that before, and also B, it's very Halloween.
Yeah.
But then pulling skin out,
Yeah.
like that was like, ugh.
That was a step beyond like what we've done so
Yeah,
far.
yeah.
Right. And then the acid thing. And then like we do when like Tony gets shot with a crossbow, like we do see it sticking out of him and he's bleeding and stuff. And, you know, then with Bala getting killed at the end, there's a lot of blood. So like there's some moments of gore in here that are okay. And then like the other thing to suggest for this movie is that like from 1961, like Betty's a pretty capable young woman in a movie. Otherwise, I would say like this thing is a snooze. This is just like in 1961, this was a time filler. In 2025, we have so many ways to fill time.
Yes. I think that the people behind the camera, fairly competent. There is a weird editing moment where you think it's going into a flashback or something, but it's not. But otherwise, I think like they did some very interesting things with lighting that showed that they were trying to evoke a mood. There's a lot of shadows here, both in like the taxidermy shed, the jungle. There's interesting things with the lighting in the trophy room, but none of it is special.
Yeah, none of it's effective.
Well, yeah, and I don't think that none of it is also like evocative enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like it shows like, hey, you're doing more than just like, you know, 3-point lighting. Like I appreciate that you're doing something. You're clearly competent, but like you're also
they're doing the bare minimum beyond
Yeah.
3-point lighting. Like it is very like we had 6 days to shoot this, right? It's
Yes.
every scene is a single camera setup kind of thing, right?
yeah.
Here's a tip from Ben Rose Film School for all you aspiring filmmakers out here. If you need to cut from a scene to a different scene that takes place later in the story but is in the same room, there are 2 ways I would recommend doing that so that the audience understands that some time has passed. Way number 1 would be to just fade to black at the end of the first scene, fade up from black at the start of the next scene. Way 2 is cut to like the moon or some seagulls or something and cut back. What this movie decides to do is follow Dr. Ballow's hand to a like bottle of whiskey, close up on the bottle of whiskey, wavy like Wayne's World doodaloo 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 transition to the same bottle of whiskey, and now 2 different characters are in the same room talking, which in all cinematic language would imply this is a flashback to an earlier time. But no, this is just a later scene in the movie. It's just a cut. Guys, you cannot use wavy dissolve as just a regular cut.
Yeah, I thought maybe like, oh, is this going to be, if it's not a flashback, maybe it's a nightmare dream thing.
It's a flash forward. It's anything
Yeah.
but just the next scene in the story.
Because I also thought like, oh, are we going to have something that's kind of inspired by the Roger Corman surreal stuff we've been seeing? No. Like maybe inspired by like, ooh, I want to use that for the sake of using that kind of transition. But it had like, it was confusing.
Also, don't do that by ending the scene looking at one object and starting the next scene on the same object.
They thought they were being arty.
They did, but they had no clue what they were doing. It's like somebody quoting from Shakespeare in a novel, but the person writing the novels never read Shakespeare and they just make up the quote. Like, what was the point of doing any of this?
A2 Romeo. So yeah, nothing really special here. Nothing to really recommend it. I mean, if you want to fill time, you have about an hour, 10 minutes. You could watch this, but you could also just go watch an episode of Columbo.
There's so much media in the world, folks. There's so much.
Leave the curse of having to actually sit through some of these things to us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think is a good time to transition to the elephant in the room, Ben. We started out with talking about this movie as Most Dangerous Game is not a horror movie. This is adapting that short story / movie. Is Bloodlust a horror movie?
So I think so.
I agree.
It is on very...
nice.
Yes, very shaky ground. Do you want to hear why I think this is a horror movie?
Go for it.
At certain points in the movie, people are skulking around in dark caves, and there's a squeaking sound, and they see a rat crawling through a skeleton. And that's something that happens in horror movies. Also, like the stuff with the taxidermy room and stuff. And like it's clear like we're trying to do horror movie stuff.
Yeah, everything from like the way that the end title stuff comes up, the extra screaming at the end, the emphasis on not looking away from the gore. I think that this is a horror movie. I don't think it's particularly good or effective, so it's not going to rank very high in my opinion, but I do think that this is a horror movie. Even like looking at the poster and the way it's advertised, I think it's a horror movie. I just want people to have guts enough to kill off their main characters, you know?
Yeah, man. That's why Psycho's at number 1.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, I didn't realize how much of an impact the bait and switch basically of Psycho has like made me go like, kill your darlings.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so we ranked The Devil's Hand at 271.
Correct.
I think this is worse than The Devil's Hand, mildly. What do you think?
The spots I was looking at are above that.
Okay.
Because it's actually trying to be horror.
That's fair. I was looking below. I started out with looking at Beast of Yucca Flats at 283. I think this is better than that because of what you mentioned earlier about the competency. So I made that my floor. And my ceiling was 273, The Four Skulls of Jonathan Drake, which I thought was like more effective at being horror than this. It's, a little spookier. Skulls, ooh, curses. And I would put this above Frankenstein's Daughter, which was directed by the cinematographer of this movie and is bad. So 274 to 283 was my range. Where are you looking?
Well, similar to you of looking at Connell's previous work with Frankenstein's Daughter, I started looking at Giant from the Unknown at number 232.
Okay.
That movie is so unintentionally hilarious, mainly because there's a guy whose name is Charlie Brown.
Yes,
and he
that's
has a
right.
gun. It's hilarious. But that movie was also fairly like tame in what it was depicting. And I think Bloodlust, like if you went to go see a movie called Bloodlust and you didn't see any blood, you'd be disappointed. And this movie shows you blood. So I was looking above Giant from the Unknown. And I kind of stopped looking up once I hit The Unknown at 226. That movie is really good. Like, yes, it's from 1927, so trying to compare that kind of horror to 1961 horror is challenging, but I don't think it goes above that. Right below The Unknown is Monster on the Campus at 227. That's when a scientist professor guy is like working with a coelacanth specimen, and its blood turns him into a Neanderthal.
Yeah.
And it's very like derivative of that kind of idea of like, oh, I'm turning into some kind of prehistoric monster, and just a monster on the campus, and the usual things happen. And we also have a bit of that like not necessarily teen but young people vibe on that. So my range is 227 to 232.
So here's my problem with this.
Yes.
Below Giant from the Unknown, we have
Man Beast,
which is terrible. We also have Plan 9 from Outer Space at 239, The Mummy from 1959 at 240, and a lot of the other Universal Mummy movies in here. And I gotta say, I would rather watch any of those again versus watching Bloodlust again. Like if you gave me the choice,
I would not take that choice for some of these mummy movies.
I would definitely rather watch Monster from the Ocean Floor versus Bloodlust. Like I don't think I would go higher than maybe Der Golem or Song at Midnight. Bride of the Gorilla has like sweaty Raymond Burr.
Sweaty Raymond Burr does not a horror movie make?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But like, I mean, is Bloodlust really better than Werewolf of London?
I didn't like Werewolf of London, Ben.
I mean, that's why it's down at 246.
I will admit I would prefer to watch Bride of the Gorilla over Bloodlust because Siad Mac, right? But Jungle Captive is here at 255. Ugh.
Like, is Bloodlust better than... Would you rather watch Bloodlust or Plan 9 from Outer Space?
I guess Plan 9.
Right? Would you know what I mean? Like, and I think that as much as we were very disappointed by The Mummy, if we're talking about like, oh, the movie gets to rank higher based on its competency, like everyone involved in making The Mummy is more competent than everyone involved making Bloodlust.
Oh, yeah. I didn't mean to imply that they aren't. I'm sorry. I just...
You know what I mean?
Sure, but does The Mummy have someone's face melting from acid?
It gets, the mummy gets that, like, speared through his torso.
Yeah, this guy gets a crossbow bolt. So even Steven.
Okay, Bloodlust versus Neanderthal Man.
Ugh.
I hate how much we have to think about Neanderthal Man.
Why?
There's The Dead One, which is actually from this same year. 242, that was the Color zombie movie with the family back in Louisiana where she's like part of the voodoo circle that brings the guy back to life. And he's wandering around. And they go up the stairs a few dozen times.
Are you sure that's not the one that's set in like Scotland or whatever?
Yes, because that one's called like Dr. Blood's Coffin.
Right.
Because he's Dr. Blood. I think the Dead One is better than Bloodlust.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially with like the level of like care you need to take with color.
Yeah. Like honestly, I'm kind of saying like maybe above Bride of the Gorilla, below Song at Midnight, which would put this at 252. I could maybe say put this above the 1912 Jekyll and Hyde short film. I'd be fine with that as well. But like honestly,
it's kind of interesting comparing this to some of those like turn of the century ones because those were predicting the beginnings of a genre, and so is this.
Sure, in a way, but this is also like really derivative.
No, 100%. I think it's really interesting though to think about like, yes, this one's really derivative, whereas like the 1912 Jekyll and Hyde, Avenging Conscience, even like the 20s Der Golem, like they were pushing ahead even as they themselves were adapting things.
But like, I don't know. Listen,
that's a whole other conversation.
I'm 34 years old. And so I'm not down with the kids and their
it'll happen to you
and their ways. But like, if I could borrow a sort of idiom of the children, I would say that like, think about Der Golem, even think about like the Black Cat, which is like the 1941 Black Cat is more of a comedy, but it does have that woman in the lace dress getting burnt up at the end.
Yeah.
Think about those movies. Think about Bloodlust. Like, how much aura do those movies have versus how much aura does Bloodlust not have in any way? You know what I mean? You get what I'm saying? This movie ain't got no riz, is what I'm saying.
All right, if it ain't got no riz, let's put it at 255, replacing Jungle Captive.
Okay, so below La Ultima Preda del Vampiro?
Yeah, because that had that Italian vampire that like he was like a Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing, right? And the bus full of ladies.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, no, I'm happy with this.
Okay. Entering the list at the new number 255 is Bloodlust from 1961, directed by Ralph Brooke.
If you would like to see this list, you can go to our website, screamscenepodcast.com. There you can find links to the many episodes that we have mentioned today, as well as our appeals box. If you would like to contest this ranking or any other ranking, you can drop us a line through our Ask box on Tumblr, or you can reach out over email at screamscenepodcast@gmail.com, or find us on Blue Sky.
Scream Scene updates every other Wednesday on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube podcasts, and probably many other apps out there. You can ensure that you never miss an episode by subscribing to our RSS feed. You can help support the show financially at patreon.com/Scream Scene Podcast. We really appreciate your support there. It goes towards our hosting fees, towards, the time it takes to research and edit the shows, pay for like the movies that we watch.
Plus, you get to be cool like Travis Stone.
Absolutely. So if you want to be cool, head on over to patreon.com/Scream Scene Podcast.
So, Ben, what are we watching next week?
Next week, Sarah, we are going in for another taste of Mexican horror with La Marca del Muerto, which I think just means the mark of death.
Okay, cool. Still 1961?
That's right.
I wasn't sure because Bloodlust came out in December.
September.
Yeah. Got a whole another 3 months. Okay.
See you then, creatures of the night.
Bye.
Bye.